Hello, team, and welcome to Creative English 2025, Episode 7. Thank you, and it's a pleasure to say we are live one more time. Team, I will be returning to these live reviews of our classes. Of course, it's not the same as having those one-on-one classes, but it's what I can do. So this week, it's a doozy. It's a hard one. We will be talking about something that has always been a pain for my students, which is the present perfect. And each time I teach this topic, I like to approach it from a different angle. And this time we will be comparing the present perfect simple to the present perfect continuous. All right? So I want to start with where I think we can improve our English practice. Everybody knows the answer to this question. How are you? I'm fine. I'm all right. I'm good. And you? Maybe a thank you. The person, well. And in real life, I think that's a great way to start a conversation. We do this so that we know I'm paying attention. But if your goal is to improve your familiarity and your competence with English, let's change this up. I think a much better question is, how have you been? What has been on your mind? How has your day been? Because right there, we include that have, that has, and get some instant English practice. So my challenge for you, whoever your study buddy is, instead of saying, how are you? Try a, how have you been? How has your day been? Or a, what has been on your mind? And I guarantee you, you'll get better answers. I had some students who they went on for about 15 minutes just with that question, which takes us to our warm-up. Have you ever played Mario Kart? Yes, I'm a Mario Kart fan. And take a look at this video and tell me, why do they say you've never played? Why you've? Why not just you never played? Because this is a slight difference between English and Portuguese. And I will be going into details right now. So the present perfects compared. And I always do a little research before giving any of my classes. Each week, every Monday, I do some research. And I always like to think I bring something new to the table. And this week, we will be comparing the present perfect simple and present perfect continuous with 10 points. Starting with the form. The present perfect simple is made with have plus the past participle. As soon as I say the word past participle, the words past participle, my students kind of go, ugh. And they get that trauma from school. Portuguese grammar is quite difficult. And English is not as difficult, but one of the few conjugations we have is the past participle. We don't use it that much, which is why sometimes it gets ignored. We have the present form, for example, do. We have the past form. We have did. We have what we call the present participle, which we just refer to as the ing form, doing. And then we have that last one, the weird one, which is done. We have these words like done, spoken, swum. Go becomes went, and then it becomes been and gone. It's a weird one. So this one can be a difficult category for my students to remember. I recommend pairing these words with have spoken, have done, have eaten, have thought, because it will help your brain when you need it. And remember, if it ends with ed, walked, played, watched, it will always be the same. So at least we have that. The present perfect continuous, on the other hand, we use have together with been and the verb in the ing form. Why? Like I said earlier, we need the past participle to use have. So let's use been. But why to be? Because any ing form, whether it's the present, I am teaching live, whether it's the past, I was organizing my live, or even the future, I will be reviewing this live afterwards. We need to be. So we found that combo right in the middle. Have needs a past participle. ing needs a to be. So have been. And if you know the verb, you can use the present perfect continuous. Do, have been doing. Eat, have been eating. Watch, have been watching. You know the verb, you can use this one. And that's great. That's the form. But let's get into the why you would use this. Starting with undefined time. What do I mean by this? If I tell you guys, I have played Mario Kart. You don't know if I'm talking about yesterday, a year ago, if I played the original Mario Kart on the Super Nintendo. The only information that you have is that at some point, John played Mario Kart. And I remember Breno, he was 10 years old when he gave the best analysis possible. So he said, well, so it's whether you did or didn't do something, but without any context? Yes, that's exactly it. Because if you do give context, if you have even an idea of when something happened, it's the past. But this undefined time is about whether you have or have not done something. We can use the present perfect simple for this, but we can also use it for unfinished time. What do I mean by that? I have lived in Brazil for almost 2 decades. Actually, it might be more. For almost 2 decades. Now, we will see in a couple seconds that I can say I have been living. It is not a problem. But when I say I have lived in Brazil for 2 decades, I am talking to you right now from Brazil. But 1 year ago, I was here. 2 years ago, I was here. 5 years ago, I was here. 10 years ago, I was here. So it's kind of like a bridge between the past and the present. And it is fine. You can use the present perfect simple for this. And then usually one of my students will raise their hand, but no, come on, then we have to use the ing form. You're still living here. And this is fine. If you want to say, I have been living in Brazil. I have been teaching English for almost a decade and a half. All of these different options, you can use the ing form. But we cannot use the continuous form for that first example of undefined time. I cannot say, I have been playing Mario Kart, talking about 10 years ago. No, I've been playing Mario Kart means I am, at the moment, still playing Mario Kart. So that's the second comparison. Number 3. So let's say I ask my students who did their homework. And Gustavo says, I have done my homework. But Rafael says, I have been doing my homework. It's a little bit different. When Gustavo says, I have done my homework, I understand, cool, he's finished. The homework is done. Let's get to the next exercise. But when Rafael says, I have been doing my homework, I understand that he's still in the middle of the action. He's still spending his effort, his time, his energy doing it. So it's still happening. And this is similar to number 4. Like I always emphasize to my students, the simple form, whether it's the future, the present, the past, or present perfect, the simple always emphasizes the fact. It's a transmission of information. If I say, I have been to Rio, you say, cool. I have watched Game of Thrones. Understood. I have read these books. Awesome. But if I say, I have been playing, I'll change it up. I have been playing soccer. You imagine me running, trying to score a goal. I have been running. You imagine me running on the street. So whenever we use this ing form, we emphasize the action. Next up, returning to my previous example. I have lived in Brazil for almost 2 decades. Now, will I be living here by the end? Well, will I be living here next month? The correct answer is we don't know. I cannot confirm nor deny this because when I say I have lived in Brazil for almost 2 decades, what I am saying is before this point until now, I have lived in Brazil. I can spend my whole life here or I can be going to the US tomorrow. We don't know. But if I say I have been living here for almost 2 decades, my face is in the way and continues. But if I say I have been living here for almost 2 decades, I am, at least in my mind, I will be continuing to live here. Of course, something might change, but the way I am communicating this is that John will continue to live in Brazil. Comparison number 6. The present perfect simple answers how many times. If I say, I have been to Rio 10 times. You still don't know when. Maybe I went 10 times last year. Maybe I went 9 times when I was younger and 1 time last year. Maybe it was 1 time per year. You do not know. So I can say I have been to Rio 20 times, 30 times, a million times, but we still do not know when it happened. So we use the simple form to answer how many times. But if I say I have been running every day, I've been running 3 times a week, when we talk about a frequency, or I have been running since, I don't know, 2021. So a time frame or a frequency, it's much more common for us to use the continuous form. Do you have to do this? No. I can say I have run 3 times a week for a couple months now. It's fine, but it is much more common to use the ing form to talk about frequency or how long you have done something. That's number 6. Number 7, the simple form can be used with all verbs, but the continuous form cannot be used with state forms, with state verbs. And I'm going to go right to a word that is used differently in English and Portuguese, which is no. In Portuguese, no is an action verb. You could say, you can't say this in English. You can say, I am knowing Paris, which means, oh, I'm the Eiffel Tower, Louvre, I ate a croissant. Great. But in English, know is just a state verb. So you either know or don't know a place or a person. So I could not say I have been knowing. If you wanted to talk about the process, you can say I have been getting to know. That is fine. But you would not be able to use know in the ing form. And a cool example of this is like. Before the internet, people didn't, I am liking this. As soon as you say I am liking something, it sounds like next week you won't be liking something. So the idea was that in the past century, people either liked or didn't like something. But liking as an action became something new. I don't know if it's Zuckerberg's fault or whatever social media started with these likes. But it's a new thing to be able to use like as an action verb. And guys, don't worry, there aren't that many. To be, know, seem, and a few others. But remember that if nothing happens, if you can't imagine that mini GIF, that action in your mind, you probably shouldn't use it in the ing form. All right? Number 8, returning to my previous example. If I say I have been to Rio 10 times, they feel separate. So I went one day to go to the beach, one day to go to the consulate, another day for a race, another day just to say what's up to Paulo and Julia, and they don't feel connected. But if I say I have been going to Rio, it feels like almost an obligation, a routine, or a habit. Oh, I've been going to Rio every month for something, for work, for a new business opportunity. So when we use this ing form, they feel connected. So I have been going to Rio every month. And I think a good example of that was the running. If I say I have run 3 times, 3 times in my life I started running. But if I say I have been running, it feels like a habit. Next up, bonus fact, I have a degree in advertising. Yes, I graduated from college in advertising. And if I say I have studied advertisement, you go, cool. And that's it. It's pretty permanent. You can't take that from me. But if I say I have been studying advertisement, it feels like I'm in the middle of a course, which will end. Or maybe I need to let more people know about the Gringo Minute. So I have been studying advertisement just personally so that I can get the word out. And I guess the liking would have been a good example. If I say I have been liking, it sounds like soon you will not be liking. So the ing form feels more temporary. And number 10, the last one, I promise this is not a joke. Well, kind of, but there's a reason for the joke. The present perfect simple is hated by 90% of my students. And the 10% who like it, they are big nerds. I love you, but you are nerds. And present perfect continuous is hated by only 70% of my students. Yes, it will win the election. And why do you think that is? I have two reasons. Number one, with the continuous form, you do not need to remember the past participle. Already easier. And number two, this one enters the Brazilian brain easier. I try to avoid speaking Portuguese, but eu tenho estudado, eu tenho assistido, eu tenho trabalhado, eu tenho dormido, eu tenho feito, eu tenho corrido. It kind of makes sense. Now, I will give you permission to use this hack if you want to compare this one, do eu tenho feito, to the undefined time. When you see have in a simple sentence, I have played soccer, I have been to Rio, I have watched Game of Thrones, you can interpret the have as já. Eu já assisti Game of Thrones. Eu já fui pro Rio. And it will make sense. All right? Team, that is our grammar point for the day. And probably not a good live to start. You're probably angry at me for, at this point, but I think this activity is worth doing. I've picked 20 words that are associated with the present perfect, either the simple, the continuous, or both. My challenge for you guys is to tell me whether you associate these words with the simple, the continuous, or both. And some of them might be mostly for one. For example, with been, I can use been in the simple form, but I will definitely use it in the continuous form. So find a study buddy, find your answers, discuss. All right? And remember, what is the reason we study this? So you can feel like this guy when you use the present perfect correctly. Team, I gave you about 90% of the uses of the present perfect. If you've got what I said earlier, I'm happy, great, but I will answer this extra credit at the end. What's the difference between I lost my keys and I've lost my keys? What we have seen so far, it's based on rules, grammar, it's either right or wrong. But this one is kind of a tool, it's extra, it's something that you can use. And exceptions, our talking point. I always like to give you guys a talking point. I think this is the best of English practices. Just pick something to talk about, grab a study buddy. You can ask the question that we like to use here in my house, which is how can I make this 10% better? Whether that's ordering a hamburger or opening a beer, whatever it is that will make it more fun for you. Because I think that's the trick to developing that healthy relationship with English, is to enjoy the process. So find a way to make it just 10% better. And some points you can talk about. What is an exception? Exceptions in different areas. An exception that led to an exceptional experience. An exception that definitely shouldn't exist. Some exceptions you make for Carnaval. How many times do you need to do something for it to stop being an exception? I don't know, maybe twice in a row? Twice in a row, that's my pick. What do you think? Is that a good number? And let me see, what is a personal rule that you never make exceptions for? On Sunday, we do not make plans in our house. And I think it's something that has helped us a lot. Now, last up, I will send this to my students tomorrow. Tomorrow is, I guess, the start of Carnaval, and I'm going to give you a game that you can use to practice some English while pre-gaming. Expression of the week, before you go out, when you open a beer or two. And officially, this game is known as Never Have I Ever. But I don't like to teach that because we don't say never have I ever in real life. But what you can do is ask a few have you ever questions. Have you ever climbed a mountain? Have you ever had surgery? Have you ever watched a game in Mineirão? And you guys decide, will the people who have or the people who haven't have to grab a drink? I will send you the complete list tomorrow. Now, team, the answer to the extra credit. I lost my keys. Go get new ones. They're done. You're not going to be finding these keys. But as soon as I include this have, sometimes it's subtle. I've lost my keys. It means I'm still looking for them. I was in your car the other day. Could you check if I left it there? Because I'm saying that something that happened in the past when I lost my keys, whether it was yesterday, last week, is still affecting the present. I'm still looking for them. And I refer to this as unclosed threads. Why? I think this can be useful at work. Take a look at this example. I finished the report. Bye. I'm done. But as soon as I include an I've finished the report, I'd like to discuss it. There's something that still will affect the present. And I see this in an opportunity for this in these daily, weekly meetings. You're saying, I did this in the past, but it will impact our present. So team, that's it. Thank you. And if you're following along, then present perfect is not easy. So if you got 1% better, or no, 1% is too little. If you got 10% better at the present perfect, I'm happy. So that's it. Thank you. And I hope to see you in class. Have a good one.